4 days. That's all I needed. 4 damn days. And they knew it. My name is Trevor Langston. I'm 64 years old. And for the past 29 years and 11 months, I've been the man who kept Applied Materials running in Santa Clara, California. No job title ever fully captured what I did. Facilities Operations Manager, sure. That was the name on the badge. But really, I was the guy people called when something broke, when it leaked, when it caught fire. When the building needed to breathe again, I made it happen. I started back in '95, fresh out of a divorce that took half of everything and left me with a beat-up pickup, a storage unit full of regrets, and one suit I'd never wear again. The job wasn't sexy, didn't come with a corner office or quarterly bonuses, but it was steady, solid. It gave me purpose. I showed up every morning at 5:30, unlocked every door before the sun came up, trained every new technician that walked through those steel and glass doors. I was the first in and the last out. And in all that time, I never called in sick. Not once. So when Nathan Berenger, the fresh out of business school CEO, called me into a sterile conference room on the 6th floor, I knew something was off. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. White walls, glass doors, no coffee, no smiles. Just him and a manila folder. He didn't even look me in the eye. "We're restructuring," he said, eyes glued to his laptop. "I hope there's no hard feelings, Trevor. You understand how business works." That was it. 29 years and 11 months. Wiped off the ledger with 2 sentences and a shrug. My pension vested after 30 years. And I was 4 days away. 4 days. I didn't speak. Didn't blink. Didn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. I just nodded. Signed the paperwork with my old company pen, the one with the faded blue Applied Materials logo. Handed over my keys, my badge. Walked past the cubicles full of people I'd trained, people who didn't dare look up. Walked past the break room where I'd eaten lunch at the same table for nearly 3 decades. Walked out into a parking lot that suddenly felt like a desert. Empty. Lifeless. My truck started on the first try, loyal like everything else I'd built my life around. I sat behind the wheel, staring back at the campus I helped expand from 2 buildings to 7. From cold concrete to solar glass. From nothing into something living. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I couldn't quite name. It wasn't sadness, or even rage. It was wrongness. Something about the way they'd done it. The timing, the silence, the precision. It wasn't random. They'd planned this. They'd waited until I was just close enough to the line, but not over it. And then I remembered something. A memo and all-hands email Berenger sent out last month. I'd printed it. I always did with important things. Taped it to the inside of my filing cabinet right next to my wife's hospital bills. The subject line had read, "Retirement Policy Clarifications and Service Definitions." I remembered a line in bold, "Retirement eligibility is calculated based on continuous years of service as outlined in the Revised Employee Handbook." At the time, I didn't think much of it. But now it felt like a setup. A trap sprung with perfect corporate efficiency. That night, I sat at my kitchen table. Documents spread out like a war map. Pay stubs, time logs, training records, holiday schedules, everything I'd kept for decades because my late wife Sarah used to say, "Always keep the paperwork, Trev. One day it'll save your ass." God, I missed her voice. She died 8 years ago. Cancer. And this job, this company covered almost everything. Back then they cared. Back then people like Margot Hill ran HR. Not anymore. I stared at the stack of files. All those years. All that loyalty. And it came down to 4 days they didn't want to pay for. I leaned back in my chair, looked up at the ceiling, and for the first time in my life I didn't feel small. I felt something else, sharp, clear, like a gear that had finally clicked into place. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. That's not who I am. But I sure as hell wasn't going to go quietly either. They say when you give a man a key, you're giving him trust. But when you give him every key, you're giving him the building. I had them all. Master keys to every equipment room, every maintenance panel, every rooftop access door. Keys to server closets no one else even knew existed. Keys to the past. Keys to secrets. They jingled like a memory when I laid them in Nathan Beringer's outstretched palm. He didn't say thank you. He didn't even look at them. Just dropped them into a drawer like they were junk metal. But to me, they were my resume. 29 years of silent loyalty cut into brass and steel. Back at home, I opened the drawer I hadn't touched in years. It was where Sarah used to keep the what if stuff life insurance wills her letters. And my documents. Pay stubs dating back 15 years. Old performance reviews, training certifications, company memos. I pulled it all out, stacked it on the dining table. And then I saw it. A printed email. Subject line. Clarification on service years, effective immediately. Dated just 4 weeks before they fired me. I read the paragraph again. All retirement benefit calculations will now rely on continuous service as outlined in the 2010 revision of the handbook. There it was, in black and white. I went hunting for that handbook. Found it under the old toolbox in the garage, sticky, dusty, but still legible. Page 46. I read aloud. Employees are eligible for full pension benefits after 30 years of continuous service or at age 65, whichever comes first. I was 64 and just 4 days short of 30 years, which meant legally I qualified, or I would have, if they hadn't pulled the rug out. I flipped back through my records. December 18th, 1995. My original offer letter still stapled to a welcome packet. I'd been hired before the new year. So why did Beringer say I only had 29 years and 10 months? I opened the folder again. Termination papers showed start date January 15th, 1996. That was off by almost a month. Accident or design? I checked my email inbox, pulled up old HR messages. Newer hires had exact start dates in the system. Mine modified, quietly, cleanly. They thought I wouldn't notice, but I did. And I knew exactly who to call. Her name was Margot Hill, former head of human resources, worked at Applied for over a decade, retired last year. She wasn't warm, wasn't chatty, but she played by the book. I hadn't spoken to her in months, but when I scrolled to her number and hovered my thumb over call, I didn't hesitate. She picked up on the second ring. Trevor Langston, she said. Yeah, I heard what they did to you. Her voice was steady, flat, like a judge reading a verdict. I've got proof, I told her. Documents, emails, start dates that don't match. You've kept your pay stubs, everyone. A pause, then good. That means they're in trouble. What do I do next? You come see me Monday. You bring everything. Do not talk to anyone from the company. And whatever you do, don't say a damn thing on social media. If they think you're walking away quietly, they won't see it coming. I hung up the phone, heart pounding slow, heavy beats. Not fear, not yet. It was the sound of something waking up inside me, not rage, not revenge. Clarity. I'd spent 3 decades fixing things. Pipes, panels, circuits, systems. Now it was time to fix something else a lie. I opened a new folder on my desk, labeled it December Justice, and I got to work. Monday morning, the sky over Santa Clara was gunmetal gray. Clouds heavy with that November weight, the kind that presses down but never bursts. Felt fitting, like the weather knew what was coming. I pulled into the parking lot of a small office building off El Camino Real. Modest sign Hill and Associates, HR compliance and labor advocacy. Simple, quiet. But the kind of quiet that said we don't bluff here. I carried 3 cardboard boxes into the elevator. Everything I had. Pay stubs, handbooks, emails, copies of memos. Even photos like the one of me standing in front of the new HVAC system they'd made me install during a record-breaking heat wave. Margot Hill's office was on the 3rd floor. No receptionist. Just her. Hair in a tight bun. No-nonsense blazer. Desk stacked with legal pads and folders tagged in color-coded tabs. She didn't smile, didn't stand up. Just looked at the boxes in my arms and said, "Set them here. Let's start." I placed them down and sat. There was no small talk. She pulled out a yellow legal pad, clicked a pen, and got to work. "Start from the beginning," she said. So I did. I told her about the meeting with Beringer, the coldness, the script, the timing just 4 days before my 30-year mark. I showed her my offer letter from December 1995, my pay stubs, the recent termination paperwork listing my hire date as January 15th, 1996. She didn't react at first. She just underlined a few things, wrote others down in shorthand only she could read. "Do you have the memo Beringer sent about retirement calculations?" she asked. I handed it to her, printed, highlighted, dated. She read it twice, then looked up. "This is golden." 3 words. But the way she said them, it wasn't excitement. It was certainty. "You realize what this is, right?" I shook my head. "I mean, yeah, it proves they screwed me, but..." She cut me off. "No, Trevor, this isn't just about you. It's a pattern. They're targeting long-term employees to avoid paying out pensions." I leaned back, let that sink in. "And that's illegal." Her pen stopped moving. "It's more than illegal. It's a violation of federal labor law. Specifically ERISA, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act. If they terminated you with the purpose of interfering with your benefits, that's not just a lawsuit. That's a federal case." She stood, went to a filing cabinet, and pulled out a thick binder labeled Dole Case Ref 0-7329A. Last year, she said a company in Oregon tried something similar. They terminated 5 employees all within 6 months of their pensions vesting. They thought no one would notice. One of them kept records, just like you. "What happened?" I asked. "They lost. Millions in damages. CEO had to step down. Criminal charges for wire fraud because they planned it over email." She opened my 3rd box, pulled out a folder I'd barely remembered packing. Inside, printed emails from my company inbox. A few from Beringer, a few from HR, some routine, but others. She read one out loud. "Let's discuss Trevor's cost-to-benefit ratio during Q4 headcount review." And another. "Legacy staff like Langston may be misaligned with current operational goals." Her eyes narrowed. "They used your name. That's how dumb they are. They never thought you'd fight back." I sat still. Let her words find their place in me. "You said it's a federal case," I asked. "What happens next?" She closed the folder, leaned forward. "We file a formal complaint with the Department of Labor. We give them your documentation. If they find a pattern, and I'm guessing you're not the only one, this could turn into a federal investigation." "And what do I do?" Her voice was calm, final. "Nothing. You don't call anyone. Don't post. Don't warn. You've already done your part by showing up with this. Now you let me build the case." There was a silence between us then. Not awkward, not heavy, just full. Finally, she looked at me and said, "Trevor, are you ready for this? Because once we pull this trigger, there's no putting the bullet back." I thought about Beringer's smirk, the glass walls, the silence from the people I trained. I thought about Sarah and how she used to tell me, "You don't need to scream to be heard. Just show up when it counts." I nodded. "I'm ready." I've spent most of my life fixing things, but this wasn't something I could fix with a wrench. This needed a different kind of tool, one I'd never used before. Silence. Margot told me the next few weeks would be critical. Not to talk to anyone from the company, not to respond if they reached out, not to leave digital fingerprints. They needed to believe I was just gone. Quiet, broken, no threat. It wasn't easy. I'm not the type to stir things up, but I'm not a coward either. And now I had something rare: leverage. The complaint was filed with the Department of Labor that Thursday. Signed, sealed, documented. By Friday, Margot had already heard back. "They're interested," she said. "Very interested." Turns out Applied Materials had been on the government's radar for a while. Not for this. Not yet. But there were whispers. Complaints that didn't stick. Rumors of benefits quietly denied. Layoffs that lined up a little too perfectly with vesting dates. Now they had a name, a date, a story. Mine. I spent that weekend doing something I hadn't done in years: nothing. I sat on the porch, watched the leaves fall off the elm tree Sarah planted the year we moved in. Drank coffee black and slow. Listened to the silence like it had something to say. And it did. It said, "Wait, watch, let the machine chew its own gears." On Monday, my phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. It was Nathan Barringer. Trevor, hey. I hope you're doing okay. Just wanted to, check in. Maybe we could clear up any confusion about your departure. Talk things through. I didn't respond, because there was nothing to talk about. He wasn't calling to apologize. He was calling to contain. And I wasn't his problem anymore. I was the match, and the fuse was already burning. Margot called later that night. They've assigned an investigator, she said. Wants to meet with you next week. But here's the real news: he's bringing someone from the criminal division. I sat up straighter in my chair. Criminal, you mean? Yes. If what we suspect is true, if they terminated you and others like you to avoid paying benefits, that's not just unethical, that's fraud. Wire fraud, I asked. Exactly. They used company emails, Trevor. Electronic planning. Coordinated timing. That's interstate communication with the intent to defraud employees of legally earned compensation. It's not just a slap on the wrist. It's prison time. I stared at the documents still spread across my table. Suddenly they looked different, heavier, sharper. I'd always thought of paperwork as a burden, proof of past things meant to be filed and forgotten. But now, they were weapons. Receipts of every late night I stayed, every emergency I solved, every corner I refused to cut. And the longer I looked, the more I realized I was ready for this. I wasn't angry, not anymore. I was focused. Tuesday afternoon, phone buzzed again. Same number, same name. Nathan Barringer. I let it ring. Fourth call in 2 days. Fifth if you count the one from a blocked number that left no voicemail. He was getting nervous, and nervous men make mistakes. I took my time, waited until the sun started dipping behind the roof lines, then called back. Not to talk, just to listen. The phone didn't even finish the first ring. Trevor, hey, I've been trying to reach you. I didn't say anything. He filled the silence like a man scared of echoes. Look, I know things got a little abrupt, but you have to understand this wasn't personal. It's just business. Restructuring. We've had to make some tough calls. I let the quiet stretch. Trevor, you still there? Yeah. Good. Listen, I'd really like to clear the air. There's been some confusion over your hire date. I think maybe HR made an error, just an administrative thing, Now I spoke. My voice was flat, measured, calm. You said I started January 15th, 96. A beat. Well, yes, that's what's in the current system. It's wrong. Another pause. He was scrambling. Okay. Look, maybe we should go over the paperwork together. In person. I could have legal take a look. If there was an oversight, we'll correct it. No need to get anyone else involved. There it was. The offer. Reel it in, patch it quiet. But it was too late. Margot had already filed the federal complaint. The Department of Labor had opened their investigation. And I wasn't negotiating. Not with a man who looked at me like a spreadsheet row. Don't worry, Nathan, I said, calm as a winter lake. Someone's already looking into it. Silence. And then the real voice came out. The one behind the press releases and the soft PR smiles. You're making a mistake, Trevor. There it was. If someone were to file a false or, let's say, misguided complaint, the company would have no choice but to protect itself. That would include reviewing that person's conduct. Every year, every email, every tool inventory log. Things could get messy. A threat, wrapped in corporate language. Coded, clever, cowardly. I didn't respond. Didn't argue. Didn't give him an inch. Just hung up. Then I wrote it down. Every word. Margot had told me this might happen. They'll poke first, try to scare you. When that fails, they'll smear you. When that fails, they'll try to buy you. I poured myself a cup of black coffee. No cream, no sugar. The way Sarah used to make it. Outside, the wind was picking up. The first real chill of the season. And I felt it in my bones that this thing was no longer just about me. It was bigger now. My phone buzzed again. A new message. Unknown number. You really want to do this? Langston, think about what you're starting. No name, just a threat. But I didn't need a name. I knew the tone. And I knew one thing for sure. They were scared. I always thought I was the last one. The final relic. The old guy who didn't get the memo that loyalty had an expiration date. Turns out, I wasn't. Thursday evening, Margot called. Her voice was steady, but I could hear something underneath, like steel being sharpened. They moved faster than I expected, she said. Department of Labor already flagged your case as part of a larger pattern. They've found 3 others, all long-time employees, all terminated just before their benefits kicked in. I leaned forward in my chair. Names, they're confidential for now, but one of them reached out to me directly. His name's Leo Ortega, facilities tech, worked nights, said you trained him years ago. I closed my eyes. I remembered Leo. Quiet, hard worker, always brought his lunch in a battered thermos bag with the Raiders logo. He was let go too. Last spring, 29 years, 7 months, told it was restructuring. No warning, no appeal.
Jesus!
Same memo, same language, same fabricated service date. They did it to him too, Trevor, and to the others. I felt something heavy settle in my chest. Not guilt, not fear. Purpose. They're going to want to talk to him, aren't they? They already did. And here's the best part, he kept everything. Time cards, emails, even screenshots of HR systems. Turns out Leo's wife used to work in compliance. He's meticulous. A pause. Then she added, "You started something, Trevor. They thought you were just another bitter retiree with a grudge. But now it's clear this was a strategy. Coordinated. Executed." I swallowed hard. How many do you think there are? We'll find out. The DOL investigator is requesting full employment records from the last 5 years. Anyone terminated within 6 months of benefit eligibility is now under review. I looked around my kitchen. The silence felt different now, like it was watching me. Waiting. I wasn't alone anymore. The next morning I got a call. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Listened to it from my truck. Mr. Langston. My name is Agent Callahan, Department of Labor Office of Benefit Security. I'd like to schedule a formal interview regarding your complaint and employment history. You are not under investigation. You are, however, a key witness. Key witness. Funny how fast life can turn. One day you're handing over a ring of keys. The next you're holding the lock open for justice to walk through. That afternoon, Margot emailed me a PDF, a scanned email string between Behringer and the current HR director. In it, they listed names, dates, estimated pension obligations, projected savings from early terminations. My name was on that list, right there, plain as day. Langston TQ4 target savings $216K pension plus health. There it was. Not just a mistake, not just a technicality, a strategy. I leaned back, closed my eyes. They didn't just fire me. They calculated me. And they erased me on purpose. But what they didn't count on was this. I kept everything, and now, so did others. Thursday morning, Oakland, Federal Building downtown. Suite 312, Department of Labor Division of Benefits Security. The elevator ride was quiet. Metal walls. Dim lights, the kind of place where justice wears a tie and speaks in redacted PDFs. A young man in a gray suit met me at the lobby, badge on his hip, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Langston, this way, please." He walked briskly, no wasted movement. The hallway was sterile white paint gray carpet, federal silence. He opened a glass door with a key card. Inside 2 agents, both younger than my daughter. Both dressed like they were born with briefcases. One of them extended a hand. "Agent Callahan, this is my colleague, Agent Reeves." We shook. His grip was firm, controlled. They didn't sit until I did. "Before we begin, Mr. Langston, I want to be clear. You're not under any suspicion. You are a complainant and a key witness. Everything here is protected under whistleblower statutes." I nodded. Didn't speak yet, just listened. The table had 2 folders, one with my name, the other labeled Crestwood, Applied Employee Termination Protocols. Agent Reeves clicked a recorder. "For the record, this is an interview with Trevor Langston regarding federal complaint L2189J concerning potential violation of ERISA statutes and benefit suppression tactics at Applied Materials." Callahan opened my file. "Let's start with your employment history."
I walked them through it.
Date of hire, December 18th, 1995. Position, facilities maintenance technician. Promotions, training certifications, 29 years and 11 months confirmed. And your termination date, November 14th, 2024. Reeves looked up. 4 days before your pension fully vested. I nodded once. And did anyone at the company explain that timing? No, they just said we're restructuring. Hope there's no hard feelings. Callahan pulled out a sheet of paper. This is the email you submitted Beringer's memo on retirement calculations, correct? Yes. Effective immediately, all retirement benefit calculations will rely on continuous service as defined in the current handbook. He paused, looked at me. You knew what that meant. I did. And that's why you started looking. I nodded. They opened the second file. It was thicker. Emails, spreadsheets, internal memos, one slide deck titled Q4 Workforce Optimization. Reeves flipped it around so I could see. Do you recognize this document? I stared. It was real. I read the title. Legacy Staff Cost Management, Slide 5. Langston T. Phase out before FY close. Benefit exposure $216K. Recommend exit by mid-November. It was all there. I didn't say a word. Didn't need to. Callahan leaned forward. We've seen this kind of thing before, rare but not unheard of. It's systematic termination for the purpose of benefit avoidance. It violates federal labor law, and it carries criminal penalties. Then he said it. Mr. Langston, we believe you were defrauded. Not laid off, not released, not restructured. Defrauded. That word hit different. It wasn't about emotion. It wasn't about revenge. It was about law. I looked up at both of them. So what now? Reeves didn't blink. Now we build the case. Now we talk to everyone. And if this was coordinated, we bring charges. Callahan added, we've already subpoenaed Applied's internal server, and we've uncovered 3 more names. Same story, same memo, same math. I took a slow breath. Everything they'd tried to erase was now evidence. And I wasn't just a name in a file anymore. I was the reason it would all come undone. By Monday morning, everything was in motion. Margot called first. They raided the HR office this morning. Warrant for emails, employee records, and internal memos. And Trevor, you won't believe what they found. I said nothing, just listened. They weren't even subtle about it. Spreadsheets. PowerPoints. Email threads dating back over 3 years. They called it a legacy transition model. I didn't laugh, but part of me wanted to. Legacy transition model. That's what they called firing people 4 days before they vested. There's more, Margot added. Leo Ortega talked. And so did a woman named Sandra Wells, 28 years in procurement, terminated with 90 days left. They changed her start date in the system, just like yours. It was spreading, like a slow, steady oil spill across everything Applied once stood on. By Tuesday, the Department of Labor had flagged 17 names. 17 employees, all in their 60s, all terminated within 90 days of full pension eligibility. Each with altered HR records, each with a trail. And all of them had kept receipts. I got a message that night. Voicemail. Sandra Wells. Mr. Langston, I just wanted to say thank you. I didn't know anyone else noticed. I thought I was just forgotten. But you spoke up. And because of that, we're not alone anymore. I sat on the porch in the dark, coffee warm in my hand, the hum of distant traffic, and a silence that wasn't empty anymore. It was full, with names, with truth, and momentum. Wednesday, the press caught wind of it. Bay Area Tribune ran the headline, Feds investigate Applied materials over alleged pension suppression scheme. The photo under it, Beringer, at a ribbon cutting from last year. Smile tight, suit perfect, eyes cold. By Thursday, the phones at Applied's HQ were ringing nonstop. Stock dropped 12% by market close. Shareholders wanted answers. The board wanted scapegoats. And Nathan Beringer, he stopped calling. Stop threatening! Disappeared from view. But it didn't matter anymore. He was no longer running the show. The emails had spoken. The data had spoken. And 17 voices, now 18, were stepping into the light. Margot called again late Thursday. Trevor, they want you to testify. In federal court. My heart slowed. They said your documentation, the precision, the timeline, the paper trail, it's the backbone of the case. You're not just a witness. You're the proof. I looked down at my hands. Same hands that turned bolts, calibrated pumps, taught younger men to run wiring clean. And now they'd built something else. A case. A reckoning. A legacy. One they couldn't fire. Federal Courthouse, San Jose, California, Tuesday, 8:45 a.m. I sat in the hallway outside courtroom 6B, hands folded, suit pressed, tie a little too tight. It had been decades since I wore anything but a work shirt. But today I dressed for war. Not with fists. Not with fire. But with facts. Margot sat beside me. Binder on her lap. Color-coded tabs. Sticky notes like landmines. She looked over once. Nervous. No, I'm ready. Good. Because they brought their army. The courtroom was cold. Tall ceilings. American flag in the corner. Federal seal above the judge's bench. Opposite us sat Applied Materials legal team. 5 attorneys, 3 laptops. One goal: discredit me before I could speak. Nathan Beringer was there too, in a navy suit, looking smaller than I remembered. He wouldn't look at me, not once. The clerk called my name. I stepped up, raised my right hand, swore the truth, and took my seat. The prosecutor, a woman in her 40s with the voice of someone who didn't waste time, stepped forward. Mr. Langston, can you state your position prior to termination? Senior Facilities Technician. Started December 1995. Terminated November 2024. 29 years, 11 months. And your pension would have vested in 4 days. Do you believe your termination was accidental? No, I believe it was calculated. She nodded, stepped closer. Please explain. So I did. I walked them through it. The offer letter, the memo, the spreadsheets, the false hire date. I told them about the threats, the emails, the message that said, think about what you're starting. The courtroom was silent. Even Beringer stopped pretending to take notes. Then came the exhibits. Margot handed over each one. Printed emails, policy memos, time cards. And finally, slide 5. Langston TQ4 target, savings $216K. The jury leaned forward. The judge adjusted his glasses. The prosecutor turned back to me. Mr. Langston, what made you keep such detailed records all these years? I looked down at my hands, felt the weight of calluses earned, not given. My wife, I said quietly. She passed 8 years ago, told me to keep everything, said someday it might matter. And did it? I met her eyes. Yes, it mattered. Then came the defense. They tried to twist it. Said I was disgruntled. Said my records were old. Said maybe I misremembered the hire date. But I didn't flinch. I told them to check the original W-2, the onboarding packet, the ID photo taken on December 20th, 1995. They looked. They found. Beringer's lawyer asked if I was bitter. I smiled once. No, I'm awake. 3 days later, the court adjourned for deliberation. Margot and I stepped outside. The sun was sharp, sky clear, wind crisp. I hadn't felt that alive in years. The jury was out for 6 hours. Not long, not short. Just enough. Margot and I sat on a bench outside the courthouse watching strangers walk by like none of this touched them. But it did. They just didn't know it yet. She handed me a sandwich from a nearby cart. Eat something. I took a bite. Didn't taste much. My stomach wasn't in the mood for food. It was waiting for justice. 3:47 p.m. A clerk opened the door. Jury's back. We filed in. The judge returned to his bench. Jury foreman stood with a single sheet of paper. In the matter of Langston v. Applied Materials, Inc., we the jury find in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. I exhaled once, soft, like a breath I'd held for a decade. We further find that the termination constituted willful and calculated fraud designed to deny legally earned benefits. We recommend federal prosecution under ERISA violation statutes and refer findings to the Department of Justice. I didn't look at Beringer. I didn't need to. I'd already won the day I refused to stay silent. The court awarded full pension restoration backdated, retroactive healthcare coverage, damages totaling $200,000, and the beginning of a class action investigation. Outside, reporters swarmed. I kept my head down, didn't stop. They shouted questions like bullets. Mr. Langston, how do you feel? What message do you want to send to corporate America? Do you consider yourself a whistleblower? I paused at the bottom step, turned just once. I'm not a whistleblower. I'm a man who kept the lights on and got fired for being too expensive. That ends here. Then I walked away. That night I sat in the dark. No TV, no phone, just the sound of my own breath. Margot had texted earlier. Justice doesn't come often, but today it knocked. I stood, went to the garage, dusted off the old toolbox. Same one I'd carried into Applied for 29 years. I took out one item, a key. The master key they'd made me turn in. I'd had a duplicate, always did, just in case. I placed it in a drawer, not out of bitterness, but to remember. What they took, what I earned, and what they couldn't erase. I didn't ask to become a symbol, didn't want the interviews, the features, the headlines. But once the story broke, once the court documents became public, the flood came. Friday morning, my phone rang nonstop. News stations, labor lawyers, podcasters who called me a hero. A CNN segment ran my story during prime time. Trevor Langston, a 64-year-old maintenance tech from San Jose, exposed a benefits fraud scheme at one of America's largest semiconductor companies. His records triggered a federal investigation, and now a nationwide class action may be underway. I watched it in my garage, alone, surrounded by tools and dust and 30 years of silence that finally spoke. Margot called that night. "You started a war, Trevor, and people are joining it." By Monday, 26 more employees had come forward. Former managers, admin assistants, line techs, all pushed out months, sometimes weeks before full retirement. They called it an efficiency initiative. But now the world knew what it really was. Theft in a suit. The Department of Labor launched a wider audit. The Justice Department announced pending indictments. Nathan Beringer's name became a household disgrace. He resigned, then vanished. The stock dropped again, 22% this time. Applied's board issued a formal apology, but it was too late for apologies. Too late for reinstatements. Too late for no hard feelings. That weekend I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a note. I was let go after 33 years. I didn't fight. Didn't think I could. Thank you for showing me I wasn't crazy. And I wasn't alone. R.J. Pittsburgh. I kept that letter. Put it in a drawer next to the master key, next to Sarah's photo, next to the copy of the memo that started it all. The fire was spreading now. Other companies, other states. The headlines had names. And the names had faces, and the faces all wore the same expression. I gave them everything, and they tried to erase me. But not anymore. By Thursday, Congress called for hearings. Senators asking questions about pension fraud, benefit avoidance, age-based termination. My story was entered into public record. I watched the clip online. A senator from Oregon quoted my testimony. Mr. Langston said, "I'm not a whistleblower. I'm a man who kept the lights on." That's who were failing, the ones who built the house and then got locked out of it. I didn't cry, but I closed my eyes and let the silence sit with me. It didn't feel empty anymore. 3 months later, the world had moved on. The headlines faded. The lawsuits rolled into settlements. And Nathan Beringer. He pled guilty to federal charges, sentenced to 18 months in prison, followed by probation, and a face no company would ever want again. Applied Materials cleaned house. New HR, new leadership, new policies with names like mine built into them. My pension, fully restored, backdated, and now showing up like clockwork, just like they always said it would. The settlement. $200,000, plus legal fees, plus a letter of apology from the board. I never cashed the apology, but the check that's sitting in a savings account earning quiet, satisfying interest. I didn't go on a vacation, didn't buy a boat, didn't get a new truck. I did one thing. I built a bookshelf. Oak, solid, dovetail joints, the kind of shelf that doesn't creak when life leans on it. My daughter had been asking for one for months. I kept putting it off. Not anymore. The garage smelled like sawdust and machine oil just like it used to. I worked slow, deliberate, letting the grain guide my hands. Not to prove anything, just because it felt good to build again. Not fix. Not fight. Build! She cried when I delivered it. Said it was too perfect to touch. I told her the same thing I used to say at work. If it doesn't get used, it doesn't get strong. She smiled. You're strong, Dad. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. Later that night, I sat in the kitchen. Same chair, same cup, same window looking out on the dark. Margot called. You hear they're passing new legislation. Federal protection against forced retirement fraud. I nodded. They're calling it Langston's Law. I didn't say anything for a while. Then, we didn't burn anything down, Margot. We just turned on the lights. I'm not special. I'm not a hero. I'm a man who showed up, who fixed what was broken, who kept the power running until the day they tried to unplug me quietly. But I didn't go quietly, because sometimes all it takes is one voice to remind the system people matter. Now I wake up when I want. I make coffee. I build things. And every now and then the mail brings another envelope. Another letter from someone I'll never meet telling me they read the story. Telling me they fought back. Telling me they won. In the end, I didn't just get my pension. I got my dignity, and I got my hands back. Hands that still know how to make something last.